Okay, it's about 8:02 here in New York, so I think we'll start and people can just keep joining, as they do. Um, I want to say thank you all for joining today. It's very exciting, just following Earth Day to have an event like this. I think there's a lot of excitement around the world about sustainability and its importance in supply chain. I think everyone here can speak to that. I'm very humbled at the amount of speakers that were interested in speaking today, all about their unique contribution and leadership in global sustainability. Everyone here continues to inspire me, and we all push each other to keep working hard at this. I always say it's always great to have a conversation, and I think that this event is an extension of that, connecting people with shared passions. So I'm very excited to announce the first annual Global Sustainable Supply Chain Pledge Day. The last thing we'll do is, I think everyone has received a pledge document, and I hope that you virtually signed it. And at the end of this, we'll have about 200 plus new pledgees. My hope is that every year, every person that joins invites 10 more people for the next year. So it will be, an exponential growth of Pledge Day. And soon we'll have, thousands of pledges every single year. And I look forward to the success of this and continuing to connect people all over the world. Um, I want to start by kind of defining what ISCEA has defined sustainability to be, because we've combined supply chain and sustainability this year. And I want to also thank ISCEA for hosting this event. We talk about it from our organization as continuous improvement in our planning, our processes, operations along the supply chain end to end, making it as circular as possible, and making sure that we don't see supply chain and sustainability as exclusive anymore. They really can complement each other, and we're seeing that more than anything. It's a shift in attitude, a shift in mindset, and a shift in the longevity of these supply chains, because at the end of the day, the planet was here before we were, and we only should take what we need. And I think that at this point we realize that we're taking much too much at this point. So we want to start to be those guardians. We want to lead in the proper way, and I think that it's all about keeping that efficiency in your supply chain without harming our planet in ways that just aren't acceptable anymore. And this is our, speaker lineup today. I want Pledge Day to be informal. I want it to be a conversation. I want it to be exciting, motivational, because, sometimes we find people in this industry and it can get a little bit heavy because, there's so much to do and there's so much, but all of these people here today have taken a positive outlook on this and are working every day to make sustainability the loudest conversation in the room. And I think that's the silver lining between us all. We're all very optimistic. We're all pushing and working hard, and we're making tangible changes in whatever industry we've come from. As you can see on the screen, we have people from around the world: India, Italy, the United States, Africa, Romania, just to name a few, Mexico. And I think it is beautiful that we all can come together with this shared passion, shared expertise, and talk. And, I want to thank all the attendees for joining. So definitely interact. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question. Maybe it'll be best if we save discussion towards the end, just so we can make sure all the speakers get a chance to speak. But definitely I want this to be a social event. I want it to be fun, motivational. So thank you all for joining. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Anne Rosenberg, who is our opening keynote speaker. She has been, an inspiration to me as a young woman in the sustainability realm. I've looked up to her for a few years now, and it's been a pleasure to work with her on multiple occasions in the past year. And just to give you a brief background to Anne, she does so many things, but she is the Senior Vice President for Sustainable Development at Wood. She is the Executive in Sustainability Tech and co-founder of the SDG Ambition. She's actually from Denmark, but she resides in New York City. She has 25 years of experience working in the corporate sector as well as all other sectors. She was part of founding the SDG ambitions, and at ISCEA we definitely support these goals. They're embedded into our course, and we make sure that we teach all of our members what the SDG ambitions are and how we can be a part of that decade of change. She launched the SDG ambition at WEF in Davos, which supports companies being more strategic, making those changes towards the more sustainable future that we all have in mind. And there is that 2030 agenda, which I referred to as the decade of change, that she is really helping companies and professionals to work towards. If you're anywhere in the sustainability sector, you've heard of her, you've seen her, you've heard her at conferences. She's definitely hard to miss. She's everywhere, and it is an absolute pleasure to have her here today. So without further ado, Anne, I'm going to hand it over to you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Madison, for this unbelievable great introduction. And I cannot applaud more the importance of creating a pledge day for the supply chain. So I'm really excited to be allowed to open this session here. And I'm so excited to be together with you again, Madison, all the great work that you're doing. So I will just be sharing a few slides here. So I think it couldn't have been a better day that we have this event. This has been an unbelievable week. We all have gone through, and I'll be reflecting a little bit on that here in my session. But the all line I will mention is, what change will you make today? I think since we begin this year, there has been so many commitments, there's so much great momentum around the huge changes that we need to do going forward. So as mentioned by Madison, I work for Woods, and before that I joined them recently, and before that I spent 20 years at SAP, so I have a heavy technology background. And of course, I'm super excited about clean tech and green tech that there's a big focus on now. And then, as mentioned, the co-founder of the UN SDG Ambition that I will speak about, and also an advisor at World Economic Forum on climate. So if we just look at this acceleration, and there's many reasons why 2021 is a historical year. First of all, because we have the vaccine being distributed around the world, and we are moving into the post-COVID world. So 2021 will definitely be remembered for that. But there's also another thing that is interesting, that COVID really have been part of accelerating, and that is the whole focus on climate. And if we just think about beginning of the year, where US Joe Biden made sure that US rejoined the Paris Agreement. That was in January. We then had Larry Fink's letter for the CEOs, big focus on climate. Bill Gates, who also was speaking to the world leaders this week, came out with a book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. At World Economic Forum, beginning of the year, 75% of all the conversation was around sustainability, resilience, and net zero. I think every single day there is conversations around sustainability and resilience and net zero. Recently, as you all know, President Biden came out with the 2.2 trillion infrastructure proposal. We are all really moving up against the COP26 that will take place here in the first week of November. And as you know, the last 2 days we had this incredible US virtual summit with Joe Biden and the global leaders. More than 40 leaders of the world were speaking about their commitment. And not just to end there, but April the 22nd, President Biden came out with a great commitment. And I will just reflect a little bit on this. So President Biden set the 2030 greenhouse gas pollution reduction targets. It's interesting when you go in the last 48 hours, there's been written so much great stuff about this. But just let's take a short look at this. This is, you can of course look up the fact sheet, but building on part of US leadership, including effort by states, cities, tributes, and territories, the new target aims a 50 to 52% reduction in US greenhouse pollution from 2005 levels in 2030. And this is in the area of set goal to reach 100% carbon pollution-free electricity by 2035, cut emission and energy costs for families by supporting efficiency upgrades and electrification in buildings, in the whole area about reduced carbon pollution in the transportation sector, and a number of things was mentioned in this fact sheet that came out that if you haven't read it, I would inspire you all to read it. So I would say, coming out of this week, there has been so much great momentum, and not just from US, but also from Denmark, where I'm from. Denmark is the #1 country in the world who are #1 on sustainability, but also #1 on climate. So our Mette Frederiksen in Denmark also came out with some great commitment on behalf of Denmark. And I mean, all over the world, we have great commitment coming from countries, but also from the private sector. The company that I work for, and the reason why I decided to go and work for Wood is that I see, and you also see, that the money that come from governments around the world are really being challenged into infrastructure. And this is where we will see the biggest shift in sustainability now. That is also what the biggest conversation have been the last 2 days. This is infrastructure that is going to be changed to be much more sustainable. So Wood is a company out of Scotland. It is 160 years old, in 60 countries, 45,000 people around the world. And it's really around sustainable infrastructure, energy transition, and digital technology. So this is an area that is literally accelerating all over the world right now. When we think about energy transition and reliability, and also working with infrastructure and sustainability area, this is not just one company or one country. Here we talk about heavy public-private partnerships. We see investing, we see governance, regulations to be able to do those huge infrastructure settings that need to be done. And when we work with this, why I was part of co-creating the SDG ambition. If you just reflect on that for 2 seconds, for 3 years ago, I started the work with the SDG ambition. And at that time, the 17 global goals have been out for some years. And I was with the former CEO of UN Global Compact, Lisa Kinko. Had just been the High Political Forum, July, at UN, and we saw that even though the 17 global goals was being talked and applied a company around the world, we couldn't really see that an improvement was taking place. The data was showing us that. And that is where we kind of begin to look at the 17 global goals and all the KPIs, but it's behind the 17 global goals, that they are actually not that easy to implement from a private sector perspective. And that's what kickstarted the whole SDG ambition. So the SDG ambition took 2 years to create. It is a methodology framework, and it is a translation of the 17 global goals into 10 benchmarks, the SDG ambition benchmarks. And one of them that is most known is the one within climate, science-based emission reduction in line with a 1.5 Celsius pathway. But if we just briefly look at this here, we really talk about, and this is really important when you look at it from a company and from a supply chains perspective. When working with sustainability, companies have been doing for years, but they have been doing it more like a nice to have, not as the core design principles, not the core design principle for when you design a supply chain. I have been doing many digital transformation projects for the last 20 plus years around the world, and working with supply chain, procurement processes, and working around sustainability was definitely not part of the design. It was more about exciting exponential technologies. It was around usability. It was around innovation, but not from a sustainability perspective. So what we need to do now is that we need to make sure that when we are implementing and creating our business model, driving our digital transformations, whatever it comes from defining the green part of the strategy and governance, that we put in ESG into our mission statement. We see that around the world right now in a big way, that companies go out with a carbon carbon emissions commitment, net zero commitment to 2050. It needs to be brought into the governance of the company, so there needs to be knowledge around sustainability in the boardroom, at the C-level. It needs to be measured on, and this is one of the big things here in 2021, carbon reporting. This week I was part of launching together with Wood and Microsoft a new carbon reporting tool that can be used across your supply chain to do reporting up against net zero. So this needs to be done, and it needs, of course, to be done on real data, not historical data, so real-time data. And then when you go into the middle piece of the framework, the SDG implementation framework is all about incorporating the SDG into the operation of your company. And this is where, to Madison's point, when you look at product and services, so we need to literally go in and revisit every single supply chain business process, every single process step in the supply chain, every single product coming out of the supply chain. And any process in the company needs to be looked at from an SDG design principle. So this is really what we need to do. And I will show a little bit in 2 seconds how that looks in details. We also need to make sure that the people management, that every single person in the company walk the talk about sustainability. We need to make sure our corporate finance, how we invest, how we allocate money in the company is done from a sustainability perspective. And then when we go to the last piece of the framework, we need, when we look at our stakeholder engagement, we need to make sure that when we set up collaborations across our supply chain, that we also require that the company that we work with, the company that we sell to, also fulfill the SDGs. And this is what we see now at Wood. We see that that is a requirement from our customers, and it is really accelerating extremely fast. At the same time, you're implementing this into the core of your business. At the same time, you also require that the collaboration partners that you have also fulfill the SDGs. When you go to market, the way you sell needs to be aligned with sustainability, and as mentioned, the whole partnership and stakeholder relationship. So you could say SDGs need to be the core design principles of what you do as a company. So when we look at the 17 global goals, we translated them into 10 business benchmarks. This is what you have on the other side of the slide here. So just to mention a few: gender balance across all levels of management. Of course, SDG 5, which is supported by a number of goals. And if you look, for example, at the circular economy, we are speaking about 100% sustainable material input that are renewable, recyclable, reusable, or the one I mentioned before, the science-based emission reduction in line with 1.5. The SDG ambition, so UN Global Compact, which is the private sector arm of UN, has thousands and thousands of members from the private sector. And when you sign up to the SDG ambition, you actually sign up and commit to report back to UN Global Compact about how well you are closing the gap from where you are today and where you what the ambition is and what you signed up to. Behind this framework, there is a very detailed, and this is when you work supply chain, this is where you can call the core of this really is, because it's great to say I have an ambition to be 1.5, but how do you then translate that into your supply chain? And this is here that you have the ambition, then you look at pathway. So in this case, it is GHG reduction, GHG compensation. And then you go in and you begin to look at example of actions, for example, increase share of low carbon and renewable energy, implement and task supplier GHG reduction strategies. And then you go into the sub goals, which is about reduction in scope emission 1, emission 2, emission 3, and then increase in GHG removal and net carbon impact. And then you start measuring. And beginning of the year, the Corporate Knights came out with a report where they were rating across the world the 100 most, you can say, sustainable company up against 1.5. And Schneider Electric and Ørsted became number 1 and 2. And this year was one of the frameworks that was used to do that measurement. When you go further into the SDG ambition, and this is really the core of the supply chain, you begin to say, for me to fulfill this ambition, I need to go down and work with the underlying business processes. And this is where you see, where am I actually working in my supply chain, in my process landscape? Procurement, supply chain, waste management, sales distribution management. And then you go further into the underlying process steps and underlying data models, depending on what industry you're in. And then you go down to the underlying enterprise architecture. This is here where you all should know that across those 10 ambitions that is a translation of the 17 global goals for the private sector, there is today a 35% technology gap. And that's why you see right now, a company like Wood that I work for, we do a lot of domain solutions that we work with together with Microsoft and Google and all the big software companies. If you go into climate, you will see today there's a 70% technology gap in clean tech. And that's again why there's a huge amount of new solutions that is being built. So it's a very exciting time right now to come up with all those solutions. So the time for talk is over, the time need for change is now. And that is why this week we just went through this beginning of the year and until now have shown that 2020, on top of that, was the year of COVID. It was also the year where company really went from, it's nice to speak about sustainability, that sustainability become core of what you are as a company, and public-private partnership is the only way to build the solution that is needed to tackle the big ambitions that we have in front of us. 2021, on top of this, is the year where we are scaling out the vaccine for COVID. And we are going to the post-COVID world. Is also the year where you will begin to do real-time measurement, carbon reporting, and where you begin to really scale out and build incredible green tech and clean tech solutions. And if you look at this, so what are the drivers? What are the drivers if you look into decarbonization? And this is what excites me a lot, because you can say it's not just one single company or one single country who can go in and do this together. It's a mix of different drivers that is helping to build those huge new transitions, because we are talking about transformational. When a CEO go in and do a net zero commitments until 2050, we are talking about many, many years of commitments that you are accountable for, that will take place, and in the end that you'll be net zero. And that's why we see the whole investment world have shifted. Today, 95% of fund managers see companies that are not responding to climate change related risk as unattractive investment. So you can say it's become requirements for investing that there is a strategy and a transition around climate. As I already mentioned, as of 2020, 49% of the world GDP is now covered by net zero target, but there's still a 70% clean technology gap. 45% of decarbonization goals can be tackled through better adoption of circular economy. So there's a lot of drivers, exciting things happening where governance and regulations and investing and UN and the private sector and the whole startup accelerator world and academia is coming together in public-private partnerships and building solutions together. With this, I wanted to mention that we need to understand the risk that is on stake here. And I think this is what COVID have showed us, because we all really, it became very personal for all of us. COVID, and this is when UN talk about don't leave anybody behind, we all understand what that means, because you can't leave anybody behind. We need to come up with solutions and we need to come up with them together. So if you look at government, how can we keep critical asset running and resilient while staying protected from climate change? We just saw what happened in Texas for 1.5 months ago. If you look at power, will grid infrastructure and communities remain resilient to extreme weather events? Industrial manufacturing, that's what we talk about, supply chain. Can manufacturing of product be done economically while meeting sustainable and lower carbon footprint goals? And yes, it can. And that's the big question with the supply chain, why this is such an exciting transformation that we're going through right now. So it is a journey, and this is what people really should respect and understand, and it's about accountability. So when your CEO is committing a net zero to 2050, there needs to be a roadmap on how to meet that carbon commitments. And that is a roadmap that is a long roadmap, because it's until 2050. And so you set the goal, you set the ambition, you put down roadmap in place, you build a good governance structure across the company, across all the different line of businesses. And then you start doing reporting on real data, carbon reporting, and then you start to begin to transition your business depending on what industry you're in. So accelerate sustainability to data-driven insight. With COVID also showed all of us, we are all very data-driven today. We all are looking on stats every single day around COVID. So this is something also that last year have learned us, how we are relying on data, and then make robust sustainability decisions with smart tools. And this is all the technology, clean tech, green tech that I'm talking about. So in the end, I just want to say that get started on this journey. Don't start alone, start in a big public-private partnership. You have seen this week that many of the announcements that have come out is announcement between companies or companies between governments. So it's really something that we do together. So this is key, because if you want to do so big changes that we are talking about and that we need to do, it's again something that needs to be done in a public-private way. The last thing I want to mention is that I'm a science fiction writer, and I wrote a science fiction book that came out 3 years ago, A Starship for Enterprise Innovation. And it is interesting. It's a historic book, which go 100 years back in time. And and the conclusion of the book is really that science fiction was not just created for movies and novels. It was actually created for the time we live in right now, where we have all the technology at hand that we need. But where we need to really come up with new great ideas, you cannot just use linear thinking. You need to really use a science fiction mindset. This is also what is known as scenario planning. So scenario planning is becoming very normal now, where we begin to build solutions that can fulfill the global goals. So by this, I again want to thank you for the opportunity to speak at the Global Sustainable Supply Chain Pledge Day. I'm so excited about this. The supply chain has a really key role to play in this going forward. And I'm on Clubhouse every Friday, where we speak about UNCOP. I also invite you all for you to be part of the UNCOP club and also be part of COP. I'm doing a lot of activities at COP, so reach out to me if you want to know more about this. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
And thank you so much. That was great. For those of you who just joined, I want to introduce myself. I'm Madison De Silva, and I am currently the program director of the Certified Sustainable Supply Chain Professional Program at ISCEA. I graduated from UCLA with a degree in environmental science and sustainability, and that has led me to combine my passion for sustainability and supply chain. I'm very glad that everyone here has joined, and that was an amazing opening keynote from Anne Rosenberg, who has continued to be a leader and very transformative, as you can see. So thank you so much, Anne. I know that I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Aseem Kumar. If you would like to unmute yourself. Aseem Kumar is the student of sustainability and responsible business practices. He currently is the head at the Asia Pacific Resource Center for Responsible Business Practices at the UN Global Compact Network in India. He has been entrusted with the task of driving SDGs, which is an extension of something that Anne Rosenberg has just finished talking about, through advocacy, capacity building, projects, research, initiative, you can name it. He's been working on it. He has over 35 years of professional research in diverse areas, including domestic and international marketing, academics, training, management. He passionately believes in the 17 SDG goals that we had just finished talking about. And we're very humbled to have him here with us today. So Aseem, without further ado, you can take it over from here.
Thank you, Madison, and from India, a big namaste to everybody present here. And I'm not wearing a hat, but hats off to Anne Rosenberg, because whatever I thought I will say, she has already covered that. So that's a very difficult task to speak after Anne, but I will still try. So when we say Namaste in India, it means Namo Stute, which means when I give my salutation of Namaste to you, I am actually praying. So from Namostute to Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, the world is a family, has been an old, ancient, saying in India, and that is what the world has come back to because there is no other alternative. So at Nations Global Compact Network India, as you must have realized from Anne's presentation, we are representing United Nations Global Compact in India. We are one of the top 10 networks currently. And naturally, because India is a huge country and the contribution of India in terms of achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals would mean that we have achieved 50% of the world's goals. So therefore, we are being looked at as the laboratory of SDGs to the world for the world. And whatever Anne said, actually that is being the hallmark of the work on SDGs in India. And we are the only agency in India which is the custodian of driving all the 17 SDGs. And for me, and I'm sure for everybody, and Anne also said that goal number 17, partnerships for goals, is the mantra. Because, and rightly said, COVID actually has taught us a lot. And, when something as huge as COVID, attacked the whole mankind, I mean, how quickly we became one. And this becoming one means that we were able to, contain, and we were able to arrest and come out with the vaccination. And we are still struggling. So the end is not yet in sight, so to say. And but the human spirit is such that you go historically or through any books or media or people's lives, and most importantly the lives of people who have had an impression on the world stage, and they've changed the way we live now or work now or think now. So all of them have had to go through a journey of their own where there were a lot of challenges. And now the sustainable development goals are not something which is something optional, number one. So therefore it pertains, or it matters to me, you, and everybody. So therefore there is no other way to tackle this. So at UNGCNI in India, we are actually working together in partnership with the other UN agencies, the central government, the state governments, the NGO sector, the academic sector, and also various other, multi-layered institutions. So idea is that it is not something where we are competing with each other. It is something where we are collaborating to co-create. And that has to be the mindset. And the most important thing that I feel here is, by and large, the message, although we have worked very hard, and this SDG ambition is a great platform, and we also are driving it in India in a big way. But functional literacy as to the sustainable development goals and the sustainability touching everybody is still, not at the pace or the level at which it is supposed to be. And there comes the role of technology. So with all kinds of, AI and all kinds of IoT and various virtual sessions like these, where we are representing the whole world, so to say, sitting at our homes. So this is like a miracle as to we used to either in sci-fi or maybe in some of the Indian mythology. So there it used to be called Doordarshan, which means that a person is able to see sitting in one place to the other place wherever the event is happening. So the same thing we are doing. Now we have reached a stage of urbanization, and definitely that has added to the problems. What has been the highlight of our development process, and I'm not talking about any one country. I'm saying in general, human beings started learning things and evolving, and therefore they started their development process, which is good on the side, but sustainability was not a core there. Therefore, what has been happening is that we do something, there are repercussions, and we take on those repercussions, and in the process create more problems. So this is the vicious circle in which humankind has been trapped. And now is the time when we say the SDGs decade of action, where we have to come together, find uh, solutions which are definitely non-linear, which are definitely within the box and outside the box, and then work together on this. And in India particularly, the government is very, very serious and enthused about the whole thing. And the Prime Minister himself is leading from the front. So we have Niti Aayog, which is taking care of all the sustainability and SDGs. And we have a lot of public-private partnerships. In fact, in India, we have something called the public sector units. So they are also working hand in hand. And during the time of, I'm just finishing in a minute, medicine. So
Okay.
during the time of the pandemic also, everybody has come together, and we are there supporting each cause. And I request everybody to spread this message. And I am particularly humbled to be here amidst such a galaxy of speakers from the sustainability space. And the pledge that we have taken, we will make sure that we don't register in thousands, we register in millions and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asim. I think what you talk about in cooperation and working together is something that's going to transform the future of sustainability and especially help supply chains to also achieve that as well. So thank you again. I want to make sure that everyone has enough time and we can hear from all the speakers. So upcoming speakers, please try to keep it as close to 5 minutes as possible. We're a little bit behind schedule, but that's okay. So let's just make sure we're moving in the right direction. Next, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Katarina Serrada. If you would like to unmute yourself and share your video. She is the founder of the SDG Hub. She is from Italy. She's a professional in the circular economy and sustainability research. She went to the University of Milan, where she was very successful and started off her career. She works with the private sector and as well as works with local governments, because as you can see from our previous speakers, it really takes a collaboration between everyone in the world, all sectors. Her recent projects are dedicated to helping supply chains achieve circularity and making sure that we work towards a more circular economy. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your introduction, Madison. Yes, indeed. I would like to dedicate my time today to the problem and to the great topic of the circular supply chains. Thank you to the speakers and bringing all these nice contributions about the efforts that we are doing. But so far, we can all conclude that this is not sufficient. We need a deeper transformation of our economic system, which is linear. We need to go to a different arrangement of how we create and maintain a value in our economic system. And this is where and why the supply chain is gaining its momentum. Our current system is wasteful. It's arranged through the globalized linear material resource flow. We have significant value leakages. 90% of the material goes wasted before it actually leaves the manufacturing site. So it's very polluting. As we know, we have the problem with the plastic pollution, with the microplastic pollution. We undermine basically the energy transition efforts to address the CO2 and other greenhouse gas emissions, because the 2/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions and specifically CO2 is actually related to the material and to the extraction of our primary natural resources. So basically what we need a different resource model in order to be able to support our economic growth. Whatever we may say about sustainable development, we all have in mind the possibility to grow, the economic growth. In order to basically sustain our needs to grow and our wants to grow, we need a different resource model. And that's why circular economy is becoming not only popular, it actually becomes one of the main topics on the agenda, because it can help us to solve the several problems. One is decoupling our growth from emissions and from material consumption and from biodiversity loss. So basically this is an alternative to our current system. We need it not only because of the environmental problems which we entail, we're basically cutting the branch on which we are sitting, because the composition of international trade in commodities is changing all the time. And for now, we have more importers or net importers of the resources than exporters. And the worrisome trend is actually that the largest economies by GDP, like the US or Australia, they start more importing the resource than actually exporting. So demand in international trade for the resource and for additional demand for the energy, land use, than water is also growing. So we really need to rethink and design our ways to create and maintain the value. So what can circular economy do for us is actually helping us to build more just, cleaner, more sustainable economy, because according to the statistics provided by the UN, to the estimates, transition to the circular economy can help us to achieve 70% of the SDGs. So it's actually a win-win situation. Why supply chain matter? Because this is where we have the greatest allocation of the resources. This is how we coordinate. For the moment, the resource flow within the supply chain is arranged as a linear way. So basically we take, we make, we sell, and then we dispose. In the last year, we consumed altogether in aggregate and a global level more than 100 billion tons of the materials. So basically, we are moving to the edge, and since we are trying to grow and achieve our SDGs, this extensive use of the materials is only growing. So there is a transit arrangement. So how we do that? We do it through the activated circular economy business models. We activate it through making our value chains less wasteful. So basically we design out the waste using new techniques in our design, product design. We collaborate better within the supply chain. We use more technology for that. We provide more information along the supply chain. Of course, for this, we need Industry 4.0 technologies. We need blockchain. We need product passports. We need digital twin, possibly for the whole supply chain, in order to make inventory of what we have as a resource more available and in time. So what is the difference between the circular and linear is actually that we do treat our resources differently. We try to reuse them, we try to maintain them, we try to refurbish them, and we try to arrange it in a way that we keep what we use as much as possible within our economic system at the highest value. So the other point is how we basically retain. So it's not only about creating the value in a different way, it's also about retaining the resource. So here we need the means for the from monitoring, improved maintenance, improved utilization. we need to contribute to sustainable development. So as Anne rightfully said, whatever we do, we should have the SDGs in mind. So circular economy allows us not only provide material savings, but actually create new opportunities for corporate growth, because we actually can unlock better utilization of the assets which we are having in our disposal. We can create new value by capturing value better from what we are using. We also can unlock new value streams using basically the waste for producing other materials and products. As I mentioned before, for the moment, 90% of what remains after we produce the product is actually waste. And recycling economy is not the solution. I can give you an example even within clean energy, and this is something that I would like also to put your attention in. It's time to green the greeners. For the moment, the situation that we have with clean value chains is that we extract a lot of resources in order to produce photovoltaic panels. We produce wind turbines, which are not so easy to recycle. So we do not have actually circularity mindset in whatever we are doing, even with this within these new and fancy value chains.
But we need to hand it off into the next, so if you would like to wrap up.
Yes.
The next conversation is also circular economy, so it will definitely translate well.
Fantastic. So yes, so basically my message is that we really need to redesign our value chains to activate the circularity through the use of the innovative business models and technologies. So thank you for your attention and for the insights.
Thank you so very much for being with us today. Circular economy is definitely one of my passions, and I think that it's a conversation that is definitely going to shape the future of all supply chains around the world. And that translates very well into our next speaker, Matthew Greenlee, who is here. He is a research fellow at the Circular Economy Research Center in Romania. So he is continuing to work hard at transforming our economies to have that circular organization. He strives to put all of his abilities into his research there, and he has been a fellow there since late 2020, and he assists in various different circular economy associated projects. In addition, he has been the director of international cooperation at the Institute for Research in Circular Economy and Environment since 2014. So his experience in circular economies is extensive, to say the least. So it's my pleasure to introduce Matthew Greenlee to continue the conversation on circular economy.
Thank you so much, Madison, and thank you for inviting me today. I didn't actually know there was an International Pledge Day this, so I'm very happy to be here.
Glad to have you here.
I will try to be quick because I know we're a bit behind from what I understand.
Yes.
First. To start off, just to mention, the part that I'm working for right now is a Circular Economy Research Center in Paris. I'm working remotely, but I'm in Romania, and I am in collaboration still with the Circular Economy Research Center here in Cluj, in Romania. Something that I want to just make 2 points on is, one is that I listened to this conversation and I appreciate all of the speakers and the UN's efforts to put sustainable development goals into mind. However, in my opinion, I think that they're very restrictive. And I think that they are more focused on richer countries, actually, and I'm open for debate to discuss this later. But I do not believe that circular economy needs to be focused only with sustainable development goals. Sustainable development goals have been developed in the sense that they are helpful for people who, as a general idea, but not about for every single person. And unfortunately, there's too many avenues, and there's 2.1, 2.1.3, there's a million different parts. And this is a UN goal in a sense. So with that being set aside, just to talk about the circular economy, it is obviously something that we all need, and things will change in the future with this. And the idea is with the circular economy, for those who don't maybe know so much about it, because I didn't hear it as given so much of an introduction in any sense. the basic principle is that we're talking about inventing products, using products, and throwing them away in a linear economy. With the circular economy, we're really thinking about how to redesign products from the beginning that can be used through the entire cycle. This is the critical difference. And the other important part about this is about trying to upskill and reskill. It's not about just trying to tell people about how to do something different if we want to change the way that the economy exists. We actually have to try to teach the people who are already working in this economy to be able to do something different. Maybe some of you know or don't know, but I'm sure many of you know Walter Stahlhaus, and I work directly with him. And he's actually the one who has made me try to rethink this idea about sustainable development goals, because he is one of the inventors of the circular economy in the late 1970s when people were not ever listening to this idea. And I think that we have to try to keep an open mind and try to see what is best for the future, and to keep in mind that even though the UN is a great position, we have to try to think about everyone to make sure that everything is taken care of. That's all from my side for right now. If there's a discussion later, I'm open to it. Madison, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was great. I think that, thank you for defining circular economy for those that may be unfamiliar. We assume that everyone here has that familiarity, but that may not be the case. So thank you again for that. This also translates to our next speaker, Sofia Agnes Nagi. She's also an ambassador and an expert in circular economy. So, we can continue this conversation. She has 19 years plus of experience. So to say the least, she also, has had her foot in the door in this sector for a long time. Just to give a quick summary of what she does and her expertise, she really helps people to transform in the public and private sector, their economies, their supply chains, to have that circularity mindset. Not only does she have a corporate passion, but she makes sure that the transformation is also from a personal aspect. And I think that's something unique to her. She grew up with a sense of understanding how important this is. And I think that's something very commendable. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off.
Thank you, Madison, and thank you for inviting me and being part of this amazing group of professionals, experts, and community. So I hope I can also contribute with a little bit of, expertise, or even, just adding my share here. I hope I can share my screen. If you could just allow me to share my screen a little bit, I could start talking about what I brought here, but just to fill the gap here in between while I can share my screen, I wanted to talk about, partially what Switzerland is doing in this sense, and how, the different parts of this puzzle, thank you so much, are organizing themselves here in Switzerland, and partially of what I'm doing. I hope you can see my screen here, and let me just quickly share this here very quickly with everybody. So, I mean, in that sense, Switzerland is being perceived as one of the most influential, affluential, and richest countries of this planet. So I do believe here we have not just a sense of what we need to do, but a sense of obligation as well, because of the amount of money that people have here. And then you can see on my screen, that I try to build, a little bit of a balanced picture of what Switzerland as a country itself is doing, because I live here and work here as a professional. Of course, I work on a global scale as a freelance professional, but it's important to see that where I'm situated and placed at the moment is partially a great country and an opportunity to share the wealth and the knowledge that people have here with other countries of the planet, and at the same time, still work on those aspects where the country is lagging behind. So I hope to build that balanced picture about the country, while many in many cases, we talk about Switzerland as a forerunner or amongst those countries where we have a clear positive distinguishing element of how we live and work here, but in reality we still have a lot to do. Although the basics, I would say, are pretty much in place. How we work with the UN to organize ourselves between the government, the NGOs, and the private sector to make things happen, and it's pretty clear from an industrial perspective and how companies work on innovation relevant for sustainability and for creating a circular economy. But I think it's still very much driven by that technological angle that is so clear for Switzerland, and we are clearly lacking those elements where other countries, for instance India or even the Eastern European countries, are much better from a frugal innovation perspective and frugal supply chain perspective. And I'm going to get back to this in a minute, but just wanted to show that here in Switzerland the basics are pretty well organized, and I think we can be pretty proud of the fact that the country really strives to plant the seeds of circularity and sustainability with the younger generations. At the bottom part of my screen, you can see two excerpts from organizations. One is a community of impact hub managers and a community of different startups and small and middle-sized enterprises who are doing what they can to establish solutions for Switzerland and also export these good ideas. But also they work a lot with universities and secondary and primary school communities and networks to ensure that the kids really learn a different mindset and how this sustainability will work for them in the future. So I think it's a really good mindset in the country, but there is still a lot to do. And of course, as you can see at the left bottom of the screen, we are really behind on many of those basics, which are part and core to the country. For instance, on life on land as an SDG, or even climate action or partnership for goals that we discussed already with the others. It's really, really one of the most important SDG goals to work together and collaborate. This is really something that we need to work a lot on here in Switzerland. So that's more of a balanced picture to share with everybody, and then to bring it closer to the others present here. And the other one I wanted to share is really my personal angle on this agenda. As a professional, I went through, as you mentioned, Madison, those 19 plus years, really starting from a place where I learned the basics and how to live in a frugal way in a very poor community of Eastern Europe, but at the same time with the passion of really making it sustainable and thinking long term, and then with that commitment that we are not alone on this planet, and we cannot be egoistic to live, and we need to live in a community where everyone can contribute and live a decent life, right? So today I also brought, professional commitments and pledges, and my personal commitment here, everybody can see from the team. So what I do from a professional perspective to help, sustainability and circularity moving ahead with a stronger pace across the governments, the NGOs, and the private sector where I work, is really connecting those people based on my background and connections to find and build those sustainability solutions. I also support companies, and share my knowledge on frugal supply chains and frugal innovation. And I know that, it seems a bit weird that I'm talking about this in Switzerland, but believe me, in Switzerland, we have this high-tech end of solutions and innovation, and really the other side where the real circular economy elements are happening and the solutions and innovation happens, they really lack. So they can learn a lot from either India or Romania or Hungary or the other countries, where you have much less resources available for either the individual people or for the companies. And also I work a lot pro bono with the startups and small and middle-sized enterprises to, just realize their dreams and to help them on the journey of sustainability. If they don't have the money, it's just not, an empty word from my perspective. It's really a professional commitment to do part of the work I do for free with those companies that need my help or need anyone's help from this community, really. And from a personal perspective, I really try to, educate myself on a daily basis and spread the knowledge as much as possible. I'll learn from my mistakes as well and help, friends and family as well to get on this journey on a daily basis. I strongly believe what Anne, Katarina, and then Matthew, and even you, Madison, and Asim mentioned already, so I'm sure everybody else will mention the same. We really need to make sure that everybody is working towards the same goals and similar ways. So spreading these, what we learned so far and how we evolved as professionals is also critical. That we are not holding back information and we share it as much as possible with everyone around us, so everybody can embark on this learning journey as fast as possible, because we don't have any more time to lose, as many of the others have mentioned before me. So, and on the right hand side, just to wrap up, those are really the networks and the organizations that operate here in Switzerland, who try to bring together all of the government organizations, the non-governmental organizations, and the private sector, and find the best ways. So I really appreciate the work that they are doing. Hence, I just wanted to showcase them as well, because they make a difference in this country to work towards the shared goals. So that's where I leave the discussion. Thank you so much again for having me here today.
Thank you so much for that great conversation. I think it's very interesting and a very important point that you make, that, sometimes we think of circularity as a very expensive thing. And I think it's important that we remind ourselves that, it's possible to make personal transformations as well as corporate transformations as well. So thank you for keeping us all accountable. And we're going to move into so thank you really again for being here and sharing that experience with us. We're going to move in, of course, we're going to move into the second hour of Pledge Day, where we'll have our next keynote speaker. But before we do that, I want to share the featured book of Pledge Day for this year, which is one of my favorite reads. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with it. It's called The Green Bundle, Pairing the Market with the Planet. And like Sophia was talking about, there's so many ways in which we need to pair, corporate and personal life, as well as, just making these transformations. And this is a book I was introduced to by a professor at UCLA, and it's one that I read over and over again. So if you're looking for a good read, definitely I recommend The Green Bundle. It really shows how we can start to transform our economies. And I want to now hand it over to Dr. Justin Goldstein. If you're here.
I'm here.
Hello.
Present. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
All right, perfect.
Are you sharing slides today?
Nope, we're just having a conversation today.
Okay. Well, I will give a brief introduction to Dr. Justin Goldstein. He is a professor of supply chain management at Penn State University in the United States. And to add to that, he has a lot of experience in sustainability and supply chain management. He is a research faculty affiliate for the Center for Business of Sustainability at the College of Business at Penn State, and he continues to actively contribute to the sustainable industry. I have had the pleasure to work with Dr. Justin Goldstein in many different avenues, but specifically at ISCEA, he is a member of the International Supply Chain Education Alliance International Standards Board. Basically helps to accredit a lot of programs around the world, especially our own programs, and he is an author of the CSSCP, which is the Certified Sustainable Supply Chain Professional course. So there has been time and time again, I have been able to work with him and know that he is an expert in what he does. So I'm very excited to hand it off to you, Dr. Goldstein, and hear from you what you have today and how you're going to inspire everyone here to continue to keep working.
All right, thank you for that, Madison. That was an excellent introduction. I'm a little bit nervous right now. I was ready to go. But thank you all for this. Thank you for having me in this discussion, Madison. So outside of my work at Penn State University as a professor of project and supply chain management, I also have spent the last 2 years in assisting in the development of the Master's in Supply Chain Management program at Georgetown. Now, Madison did discuss my work with the Sustainable Supply Chain Certification at the ISCEA, but I wanted to highlight the education aspects, because that's where it starts. Whether you have an undergraduate degree, whether you're going for a master's, and given that I've spent the last 5 years mentoring doctoral students, I always say within the PhD programs, once you defend, that's when the work starts. And the same holds true with certifications. The same holds true with education. The same holds true within this discussion we're having now. Once you have gained that knowledge, once you have gained that framework, now you have to share that knowledge. You have to shout it from the rooftops. Now, one thing I always say is whenever we're talking in these sustainability spaces, we're all here because we understand the importance. We all must have a goal to get more people to join this movement, to get more people to join this fight. And we have to find those innovative ways to get people to join this fight. Now, Daniel Runde, who is he works for the Center for Strategic and International Studies, he said that we need a data revolution in order to meet the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And it's my belief that the lack of data was one of the reasons why we fell short with the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs. And with the SDGs, some of the Millennium Development Goals rolled over into the Sustainable Development Goals, and they became more narrow. Okay, so the MDGs, in my opinion, were a little bit broad, and I think that the UN did an excellent job in further defining the SDGs. But in order to address that gap, I am currently writing a book called AI for Good: Achieving Sustainability Through Citizen Science and Organizational Citizenship. Working title's a little bit long. Work with me here. But my goal is the objective of the book is to blend sustainability with technology. So that way I can have people that are interested in technology, that are interested in artificial intelligence, and to introduce them into sustainability. Those people that are interested in sustainability, now I am educating them on how they can leverage artificial intelligence to address these goals in which we're all striving to meet. So that is my approach to bring more people into this fight, more people into this movement. And although some people say that it's a bold statement, I think that because we are so hung up in our careers, because we're so hung up on the internet, I think that we've moved to a dystopian society. And I believe that if you do some research on these dystopian worlds and these movies on dystopia, you'll see some indicators of what we're living in today. Now, my goal is in my lifetime, is to move to a utopian society, but it's not the utopia that you will see in books. My utopian society is simply a sharing economy. It's simply not being influenced by monetary things, most importantly, not being influenced by social media. It is just simply being an ethical human being. And if we all act ethically, if we all share the importance of sustainability, if we all share how acting sustainably, how acting ethically can lead to additional monetary things and additional revenue for our organizations, additional salary increases, then we can get more people on board on what we're talking about today. So a few takeaways, I'll give home, I'm a professor, I can give them homework. A few takeaways is one exercise that I do that's very beneficial. I do this with my students. I do this at conferences. I do this with leaders of organizations. Is write down what your definition of sustainability is. Once you have done that, then write down your top 2 SDGs. And whenever I perform this for a sustainable fashion school in the UK, I found that I interviewed a number of people from Eileen MacArthur Foundation, the UN, GE, IBM, and I found that every single person had a different definition of sustainability. I also found that almost everyone had top two SDGs. And my thing is, that's very important. That's needed. That way, every single SDG can be addressed with the priority it deserves. So once you have done that, please do that same exercise with your peers, do that same exercise with the leaders of your organization. And I think that there will be beneficial takeaways to that. But as we wrap up, I would love to continue to collaborate. So please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can go to my website, justingoldstein.com, to see more presentations. But you can also go to sydtech.ai, sydtek.ai, to see an interesting project that we're doing in higher education, a social impact project we're doing in higher education to bring blockchain to make a positive impact on the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goldstein. That was great. It's always interesting to hear what you're up to and all the different, you always give homework. So I definitely know that you're a professor, but
Thank you.
It's great to have you here today. And, as an extension to that, I want to speak to the point of, how important we both can agree that, education is one thing, but action is another. And, you say the word project, and, that's something we're really excited about at ISCEA as well. The potential here with the CSSCP course to actually have, that level 2. And for those that aren't familiar with our course, we actually do have a project aspect of the education, meaning that not only is it a lecture course and an exam, but we think that, like Dr. Goldstein said, action really is important, and we help you start these projects and initiatives and make sure that we're actually making tangible changes, because we can sit here all day on Zoom, talk about how we see sustainability transforming our supply chains, how we're working towards circular economy, but to actually go out there and make those changes is a whole different story. So it's exciting to see that we're really going out there and doing the homework, like Dr. Goldstein says. So thank you again for being here with us today. I will speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I want to introduce our next speaker. I think we're doing okay on time, but let's definitely stay on track so we can get everyone into the program here. Next, we have Miss Denise Staff. Are you here? If so, please unmute. Denise, maybe. Okay, maybe we'll skip her and we'll come back to her. That is okay. Then I guess we will keep on going, and we will go on to Sebastian Holmstrom. You would like to unmute?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I will give a brief introduction to you, and if you would like to share your screen, I can give you access. If not, let me know.
Yeah, I'd like to share a few slides.
Of course, let me. Okay, you should be able to share your screen now.
Perfect, thank you very much.
Of course. And while he's getting that up, I'll give an introduction to him. Thank you again for being here today. Sebastian works as a circular strategy lead at Inegro in the Nordics, leading IT refurbishment. It's really interesting, actually, what he works to do every single day. Basically, they have, which he'll talk about, but IT products in the thousands, 350,000 products that they help to transition from linear economy to circular economy. And I think it's really a great combination. Like Anne Rosenberg started off the conversation, is infrastructure and technology, and how that's really always going to be a way that we can work towards a more sustainable future. I think this complements it very well and shows a very real life application about how we can take what we have in our inventories and infrastructures and, inherently make that into our ever-changing and ever-growing circular supply chains. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off for a very inspirational talk about some tangible applications.
Thank you very much, Madison, and thank you everyone for today. It's been really inspiring listening to a lot of different examples regarding the sustainable supply chains, circular economy, and I'm going to give an example of circular economy in action in the Nordics and how our supply chain is actually used computers. So thank you very much for today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the problem, but you guys know that. So we produce things with a lot of climate impact. There is conflict materials that goes into production, and we transport that all around the world. We use the products for way too short, and it's end up as waste way too quickly. And what we try to do is to connect this. So what ends up as waste is actually our business. We buy the products that organizations try to discard. And because for us, that's a resource. So what we try to do is to really expand the use phase to make sure that the products are used for as long a time as possible. So we can produce less, and we can make sure that as little as possible ends up as waste. And when it does, it will be handled correctly and recycled. And if you look at electronics, 70% of the carbon emissions, 80% is from the production, 13 from the use phase, and 7 from transportation. But then there's also an invisible waste. And I guess that every single one of you is sitting on a laptop right now. And that laptop generated around 1,200 kilos of waste, even before it reached you in the production, in the mining of the materials. So we really need to keep this in use for as long as possible. And we have calculated with researchers in Sweden that if you reuse a computer, you'll actually save 208 kilos of CO2 and 55 for a smartphone. So our business model is simply to maximize the use of used electronics. We try to find different ways to doing this. And regarding today's topic and the supply chain and reverse logistics, our biggest challenge is actually not selling our used products. Because that's a misconception that the biggest problem for us as a circular company is to sell the products. It is getting products in. It is closing that loop, getting organizations to prioritize to sell their used IT to us. And they'll actually get paid for that instead of paying for it to be recycled. And as you mentioned in the introduction, we reused 350,000 products last year. And this is growing for every year that goes, and we need scale to the circular economy. We need to scale it quickly. And I really like that with the introduction. We're talking about what are we doing today. There's many numbers regarding 2030, 2050, and what we need to do until that. And those are really important. We need to take action today. And our goal, and if you would like to say pledge, is to scale this. And we want to keep more products in use to really enable a circular economy for electronics. And just quickly about us, we're based in the Nordics, in Sweden. Really happy today to have people from all over the world. And we buy and sell electronics to 90 countries and have around 200 employees. So the circular economy has been in the core of our business since we were founded 25 years ago, and it still is. And I'm not going to say so much more rather than thank you for today. Please connect. As many have talked about today, nobody can solve this alone. Goal number 17 might be the most important one of all: partnerships, because that's the difference between the linear and the circular economy. In the circular economy, you need to collaborate with your supply chain, with your customers and those who you sell products to. While in the linear economy, you could do most things yourself. You're buying things and you're selling things. So collaborate, and thank you for today.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I think it's, everything that you talk about and touch upon is very relevant, in terms of figuring out how we, have these infrastructures already in place and what we can do to work towards that circular system is a really important conversation, and one that, needs to be talked about over and over again until we figure out how we can best implement these practices. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm going to hand it over to our next speaker, Mr. Umberto Oliveau. I'm going to introduce him. I think it's interesting. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. I think it's interesting, to talk about all these technologies and SDGs and things that we're all doing as professionals to work towards this. But one thing that we haven't touched upon today is the financing side of how are we really going to make these solutions applicable. Personally, I have a very science background. So, when I go and talk with people in the business sector, it's always, I love the solution, but how am I going to actually implement this? And that's where the importance of entrepreneurship and venture capital and investment comes into place. And I want to introduce Umberto Oliveau, who is in the venture capital world. He's from the United States, and he is a seasoned investment banker, technology entrepreneur, and definitely has some experience in this realm. He has a background in M&A, and he really is the one that makes sure that all of our talk and all of our passion gets translated into change. So, he's invested, founded, mentored several companies around the world in the US and in Europe. He has degrees, like I said, in economics, international finance from universities all over the world. So his background, his education, his experience is extensive, to say the least. And, currently he's a managing partner at Vulpo Ventures in Austin, Texas. For those of you that aren't in the United States, that is a state in the United States. And he is currently doing the clean tech, health tech, and digital and circular economy transition initiatives there. So I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about the importance and how we can really, take all of our passions and all of our expertise in all of these different areas of circular economy, IT, things like that, and really make sure that what we care about is getting implemented. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over.
Thank you so much, Madison. Could I share my screen, if possible? And thank you for this great introduction. I think it's really an honor to be here with you and with all these great speakers. Let me see if I can.
You should be able to share your screen.
Yeah. Let's see. I don't know if you can see my slides.
Yep.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Madison. It's an honor to share this Saturday with all these great speakers. And yes, as you mentioned, we're very much involved in my professional life in private equity, investment banking, and venture capital in many different industries. And I think that gives sometimes a good general view of where the trends are going and try to make sense of those trends. So I would just like to share with you a couple of thoughts. Let's see if this. So we live in high uncertainty. being an expert navigator is the key to innovation success. And we see that with SMEs, with great corporations, and with startups. And there are many ways to think about the future, but some are more productive than others. Some are too vague. Some are too doomsday-like. And before COVID, we were already living in a highly what we call VUCA world or tuna world in the UK. So a volatile environment, an great uncertainty, really complex systems, and unclear interpretation of where things are going. So the environments in which organizations now exist are moving so quickly that future outcomes cannot longer be assumed. There's no data about the future. And so we need new ways to deal with strategy, innovation, and risk. And usually prediction, like pessimism, is deterministic and static. And we need to start thinking about foresight as an intellectual exercise where we can imagine different scenarios or different alternatives of the future and trace back how can we achieve those possible scenarios. So it's not about prediction, it's about connections. And it's pretty much about shaping the future we want. And as Don Tapscott from the Blockchain Research Institute in Canada saying, and getting into supply chains, if you can get it, then part of one supply chain lets you down. And going deep into the topic of today, sustainable supply chains, I think it's important to consider where we are and what's happening right now. So we have trade conflicts and tariffs, the China war and some other states like Iran, Venezuela, and we have long-term COVID impacts that we don't yet know how long and what will be the real impact of this year and a half. And we have, the famous solar winds and cyber threats and the protection of intellectual property. A world that's being more digital has more cyber threats and potential of disruption through cyber. We have policy uncertainty and geopolitics, the risk of new disruptive events, the reliability of suppliers, and of course, climate change. And climate change, Anne was talking about that. We had Earth Day this week, and we had the whole week was about climate and sustainability. We're doing a circular economy series in the US, in North America, and it was about circularity, sustainability, and climate. And just 2 months ago, on February 24th, President Biden launched an executive order to do a deep analysis on the supply chains of the key supply chains of America. There's also a big announcement a couple of days ago about the jobs plan, the Biden jobs plan, and the Made in America tax plan. And we still don't know the implications of that. It still, has to go through Congress and some other, the whole process, but it's clearly about infrastructure. It has a big tax component for offshoring, so that will probably change part of the supply chain. And it has credits for reshoring, so bringing manufacturing and jobs back to the US. So in general, we see big disruptions coming. Climate change as a national security threat is something that's really in the agenda right now. We had Secretary John Kerry yesterday talking about that and how we need to make climate change really top of the agenda in terms of national security. the annual threat assessment of the US intelligence community that was presented on this April 2021, dedicated only 2 pages to climate change. And that was one of the things Secretary Kerry was saying. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than 1.5 page. So there's going to be a real movement and agenda in trying to get initiatives, solutions, restructuring supply chains around sustainability and climate change. And of course, decarbonizing the supply chains and achieving net zero, and more talking about circularity. Europe is way ahead of us, the US, in terms of circularity. When we talk about circularity in the US, most of the companies just think about recycling. And as Matthew was saying before, it's not about recycling, it's about design. So the beginning of the whole spectrum is about keeping materials in the loop, and it's about regenerating natural resources. So we have a big task ahead of us. Supply chains, in order to tackle climate change, scope 3 is a real game changer. We need to focus on the supply chain to really move the needle in terms of climate action. And we need to start thinking from supply chains or linear supply chains to more of value networks, distribution like blockchain, where you have resilient networks, because if you shut one neuron, the rest keeps working. And so when we talk about circular supply chains, it's, as I mentioned, it's about design out waste and pollution. It's about maintaining in the loop the resources we already have in the system. And it's about regenerating natural systems. And now it's a really interesting moment because we have the technology. We have a big digital transition. We have IoT, artificial intelligence, machine learning. We now are seeing blockchain really developing and having practical and useful and valuable solutions for different problems. And in terms of supply chain financing, which, you know, we've had fiscal policy to help SMEs stay afloat and survive. But now, if the economy starts to pick up, the SMEs are going to need financing not to survive, but to be able to get orders. And the banks are really hesitant and, you know, reluctant because of the risk. And that's where fintech, for example, is going to play a really big role in terms of trade financing and supply chain financing. And I wanted to just give a really big picture. And this is a great map that I always try to put in any presentation. It's made by Richard Watson at nowandnext.com. And it just tells you the complexity and the system, how we need to look at everything as a system. So supply chain is not linear. It needs to be looked at as a network or as a system. And this map just gives you an idea of how megatrends and technology relate and influence each other. And of course, climate change is a big part of that. And I think we need to start asking better questions about what's happening. Who is working in what? I agree with Matthew when he was saying about the SDGs. We need to stop thinking about the SDGs just to tackle one or try to get what we call greenwashing or SDG washing, just to have one of the goals there. And we really need to see how is that related to my industry, what I'm doing, my company, or my suppliers. So we need to start asking better questions. And finally, like Justin also was mentioning, I really believe education is the key to solve this whole puzzle. And we need new skills, and we need capacity building. We need digital skills. We need a system thinking and foresight approach. And we really need to start learning an entrepreneurship mindset. You don't need to create a startup or be an entrepreneur, but the mindset of an entrepreneur, if you work in government, in policy, public policy design, if you are in academia, or if you work for a corporation, the entrepreneurship mindset will help a lot in detecting opportunities, capturing opportunities, and trying to think how to solve the problems around those opportunities. And just to finish this general view of where we are, and Anne was talking about that, the future of space. How is space going to look, or how are the supply chains for space going to look? And it's not that far away. So we really need to start thinking, how is that going to look? How is that going to affect our life on Earth? And how is that going to affect our life outside the Earth? So thank you so much. I hope this is some food for thought. And if there's any comments or questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Umberto. It was great to hear from you that, you know, you are so right. There's so many things that we need, and there's so much progress that can be done. You know, I can see people in the chat room agreeing with you and sharing their perspective as well. And I think it's great at the end we can have a discussion about a lot of the things that you touched upon. I think that you specifically have a very interesting perspective because you take a very practical look at, you know, how we actually can attain these changes and what we need and where we see the future actually looking like. So I think, you know, there's a lot to be discussed here, and it's a conversation that, you know, we should continue.
Thank you
so much again. And then I want to introduce our next speaker, which is, you know, very, very humbled for her to join us today. And I'm going to give her access to share her screen while I introduce her. So let me just do that really quick. Okay. Great. Our next speaker is Ms. Susannah Cass. She is a data center advisor on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In this role, she represents the UN, a sustainable development team, by engaging in private sector leadership, academic research, and with public institutions to promote sustainability within the international data center industry. You know, it is amazing what she's doing right now. I think it's a very relevant conversation we're going to have because currently Susannah is one of the researchers for the Clean Energy for Biden. And what she does is her focus is actually to provide the scientific-based evidence for America to revamp our policies and specifically the carbon neutral infrastructure. So looping right back to, you know, our beginning speech and talking about the importance of infrastructure and how that's really going to be how we, you know, make the most sustainable advancements. Susannah here is helping to revamp the United States right now and our plan for carbon neutral infrastructure to support the new enactment of the Paris Agreement. So I think following this week with all of the updates from the Biden administration, I think she's going to have a lot to share with us. In addition to her impressive roles with the UN, she's also an energy fellow lecturer in the School of Engineering at Stanford University. And she works with people, researchers at various institutes in the United States, including UCLA. As a UCLA alumni, I'm very excited about that. Go for UC Berkeley, also a great school, but definitely not UCLA. And CSU, Cornell, just to name a few. So I could go on and introduce her for hours because her experience is, extensive, just like everyone else in this lineup. But I think it's going to be way more interesting to hear from her on what she's doing and how she's helping to transform. Especially, we'd love to hear about any updates with the Biden administration and how that's going as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Ms. Susannah Cass. Thank you.
Thank you, Madison. Hello, everyone, and happy Earth Day. I'm calling in from the Bay Area, California. I assume you all can hear me okay and see the screen? Yes? Yep. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Madison. Go Bruins. And the ISCEA organization for organizing this amazing global sustainability supply chain pledge. I think we all thank you for all your hard work and your follow-up. So let me get started. First of all, thank you for initiating the commitment. Here's my certificate, and I think all of us actually should be signing this, including the audience. We do need to make a personal pledge instead of just zooming in or zooming out. We need to basically take action. Climate crisis is here today, and action matters. The second one, what I basically want to show is the following. I'm from the high-tech industry. Prior to me doing a lot of sustainability, I spent 30 years in the IT data center sector. I was the COO for eBay and also run the HP data center operation based in Asia Pacific, in Singapore, and also all the different countries in Asia. Very challenging in terms of actually doing data center there, but we continue to do that. So one of the key things I've been always tracking is what happens to 1 minute on the internet during the pandemic. And you can kind of see it on the screen. And in addition to that, look at all the other companies that have also made the commitment that I work with every day. It is very exciting that historical moment, America is enacted back to the Paris Agreement, hooray. More work needs to kind of get done for what we announced this week in the Climate Summit. So it's wonderful to be actually a researcher to provide the administration science-based target and evidence. In addition to that, in my sector, which is data center, which I assume you all actually have experience with it, even though you don't touch it every day, we have this new initiative called Climate Neutral Data Center. We need all the leaders today to actually basically help us out in cleaning out the supply chain. We've been focusing on direct consumption, which is something that we started, and don't mind us because we use a lot of energy and consumption of our infrastructure. We also use a lot of resources, and definitely we use a lot of materials because of the equipment. And not only that, but we also do a very quick refresh on our equipment. As a COO for eBay, I'm a big fan about pre-owned items, and we'll talk more about that, how it's actually impact the data center. So it's wonderful for me in my career. I'm very blessed that I started as a computer scientist in a data center and have been working in parallel in the energy industry for almost 15 years now because of the consumption and the intersection point that we do. So coming out from Stanford, graduating there, I also lecture there because we fundamentally believe in a multidiscipline. Doing one thing is good, may be excellent, but it's insufficient. That's why we're all here. And thank you again, Madison, for bringing us all together. So let's talk about metrics because I'm a quantitative kind of gal. For some of you who don't know, we have the biggest data center in US in a town called Ashburn in Virginia. Most of the data center are sited there. So for Net Zero Data Center, which is a company that I co-founded with Dr. Umberto Oliveau, who is listening from Switzerland today, InfoPrime focus on net zero clean energy infrastructure, specifically to address net zero data center. So we keep track of all the energy consumption of carbon emission. This slide came out from EPA, and 1 megawatt of data center for 1 year would generate 7.78 million pounds of carbon dioxide, which is really huge. So if you think about just in COVID in Virginia, we have introduced, because we all work from home, we have new build of 800 megawatt just in Virginia. I'm just gonna pause for a second. Think about 800 megawatt times this number I share with you is what we actually emitted just from the data center. It is absolutely unacceptable if we actually don't address this problem. So let me share with you some of the things that I have actually done in the project. So as Madison said, oh, Susannah, it'd be great if you can share some of them. So this is one of the hyperscaler that I got involved with a few years ago. You can see they nearly actually have dirty emission all the time for all the energy consumption. They may have a solar rooftop in a parking lot. That's why I give them 99%. If you think about it, what we have done is through our net zero design, which many of the speakers talked about it, we have eliminated 25% to 50%, depends how you count it, when the energy consumption increased a year after. Then we continue to work on energy efficiency to bring their energy consumption, level them off, similar to basically what Anne started as a keynote speaker, and she is absolutely amazing. We actually bring down the energy consumption overall, and at the same time, reduce the emission. And then you can kind of see it before COVID, what happened. The energy consumption goes back up because we were all so excited, since so long ago, at the beginning of 2020. So we were definitely building up the infrastructure in terms of capacity growth, based on what the last speaker spoke in terms of the capacity growth. And data center definitely have done that. If nothing else, since March, data center has been growing 400% each month. That contributed to the internet minute that I shared with you. But we were able to actually remove 60% of that. If you do the math on it, effectively in 2.5 years, we removed the emission that we actually started 3 years ago. These are the metrics that we basically keep track of. At InfoPrime, in our first year of founding, the company was selected due to Dr. Alberto's effort, my co-founder. We have been selected by the European Union on a clean energy project to lead the standard definition of clean energy infrastructure for cloud, edge, and colocation provider. We look forward to working with many folks in the country, and I'm a big fan of the Nordic because of the beautiful hydro that you already have, that your green is not so much just green, but also resilient. What I have done is actually created this slide, mapping the UN SDG goal in terms of responsible consumption and development in the design of the data center, site the data center where renewable energy is available. If not, InfoPrime have on-site carbon-free energy to provide resilient 24/7 economic, environmental, and social cost of ownership. The speakers today is totally right on. We have been grabbing resources from the environment when we build a data center and we don't need it, we just basically toss it right back. And I am the first person to admit I'm guilty of it. At eBay, when we first started, that's basically what we do in terms of building data center. Unacceptable behavior. I'm very, very sorry for the future generation. So I am here to redeem myself and hopefully help to promote that we need to do things differently, especially when we actually do the scaling in terms of expansion. But worst of it all is actually when we have to take the data center down because we need to actually have no new technology. We created massive landfill and we use tremendous amount of resources. Hence, I actually created this other diagram over here to come up with this concept called a digital material passport to keep track of all the materials that we basically have. And I do agree with one gentleman speak earlier that it's not about just recycling. I came up with a word to describe what we're actually trying to do. I call that upcycling. We need to be more responsible in scope 1 of our direct consumption, indirect consumption, but more importantly today, we actually talking about the entire value chain. So some of the work that I came up with, as I told you I'm a computer scientist, I developed this basically control center, which we do that all the time. We keep track of basically any event that goes on that keep the data center. I make that available to be on a pad and an iPhone for the device. So you can basically interact and actually see the real time on what are you actually working on in terms of consumption production, but at the same time, be transparent and accountable. I'm glad to make this available and collaborate with anyone because it's all API driven. So it would be wonderful if we can actually get grid signals from the grid when it is that you have the highest carbon, just like when it is that you have the highest rate. So these are some of the things that we basically do. At InfoPrime, our customer treat the need to become sustainable as a corporate social responsibility. such as the hyperscaler Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, and Equinix alike. Like me, sustainability is in the heart of our design thinking. We learn from each other every day, and I thank all the pioneers as they exemplify their pioneership, and it is absolutely very audacious in terms of the ambition we set. But then again, we lift up the reputation of a moment in living in Silicon Valley. We are our environmental pioneer, InfoPrime technology innovation, and make possible with the extensive knowledge that Umberto bring in. Not only we make it to be sustainable throughout the supply chain, but we also need to do one thing which is really important that all of you are going to experience is resilient and uptime. Hence, we bring in a pack of data center when we actually build it. The waste that we got from the data center is already planted in terms of producing food. The waste of the community is converted into a biogas plant that can actually be the source of energy for the data center. And we absolutely use technology like battery and hydrogen in terms of supporting the infrastructure that can be shared by the mobility. But at the same time, we can actually measure ourselves in terms of generating through circulytics, and we absolutely support the UN SDG goals. So this is just an example of that. And I will share a link with you guys if you're interested in our white paper. So I measured everything that we do in terms of reduction in capital costs, reduction in operating expenses, absolutely a transition into clean fuel, and perhaps a move away from the synthetic instrument called a power purchase agreement to use clean energy. But more importantly, not just we do the supply chain and the net zero, but we also have to give it the uptime, because you all demand and you will complain when you actually don't get your response time. So we need to make sure we do our job correctly. And while we're actually doing some of our design, we actually produce this water instead of using water, which is very, very important for the data center, that we actually are mindful about what we do. So hence, I think sustainability has proven to not only just improve the brand quality of what we do, but at the same time, our new president of America has proven such that sustainability is in the heart of what we're trying to do. My plea to you is the following. This is an opportunity time for all of us. That's why I got up at 5 a.m. this morning, Madison, for you and for the team, not to do the status quo. Do not adhere to the lowest environmental standard for what we do today. The climate crisis is here. We can no longer ignore our social responsibility. Do not make the mistake that I did 30 years ago, that I just go grab the resources because I can, that I can pay for it, to build 200 megawatts of data center across 17 countries in my career. And then we toss out the waste when we don't need it. And we also have idle standby energy resources that is just standby in case we have the oh my God moment that the grid may not be available, such as the avoiding the ERCOT event that we had 2 months ago, which is really unfortunate, but I can assure you it's not lack of technology that caused the event. And we have all these standby resources that can be actually powered a small country in the developing world, and we cannot do that. It is just wrong. We should all do our work. Today, I felt like more green policy will be forthcoming to enforce upon your businesses to be responsible, accountable, and transparent. So we should actually get ahead of the game, lead in the front, ensure that each of the stakeholders are involved, including the planet, as we actually start moving the journey going forward. So with that, I'd like to share with you that there are definitely white paper resource guide, including actually the latest April edition that cover the data center sector about how we are actually looking at supply chain and how we actually looking at transition into clean energy. And we have very audacious goal, and it did a very good job in actually mapping that out. As a data center advisor, my role is very simple. I work with the UN SDG program done by many people who actually designed the global goals. And I did the mapping with the private sector leadership, academic researcher, and public institution to jointly promote what that means for the data center industry. And through mutually beneficial collaboration, we do goal setting, which I'm sure most of you have already read about that. At least 2 years ago now, that most of them have made the carbon neutral and a negative pledge, just like the diagram I showed you a little bit earlier of all the company have commitment that we have worked on. And in addition to that, we also have new $1 billion clean energy fund. I enjoy being a researcher, continue in my life. I learn a lot by other scientists, and we continue to actually lecture the bright mind. And I really like to encourage more ladies, more young women to actually join the STEM program that I have mentored over 300 of you guys. And many of you guys have already graduated and start going outing and founding companies and going into the sustainability field. So I cannot be more thrilled to look forward to the collaboration with ISCEA of the education and the certification program that you folks have. And like to contribute any way we can with my network and the resources that I can share. So thank you, Madison. Back to you.
Thank you so much. I think, you really bring a unique perspective, and just like you ended there, it's great to see women leadership in this transformative era. I think, there are so many great women I've been able to connect with and have mentored me as I've grown up and become, moving into my professional role in sustainability. So it's really a pleasure to have strong women leadership from yourself and others. So thank you again for continuing to be a leader in the industry.
Well, thank you, Madison. We have to thank Anne, because gender equality is one of the key goals in the UN SDG.
Okay? Of course.
Well, we got a lot more work to do.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And like you said, young minds are very important. And the last two speakers who, I know we're about the hour's about to end, but if you can stay, please do. It's two of our ISCEA Global Ambassadors, very brilliant young minds who I get to work closely with. They are Domilola and Sophia. First, I'll introduce Domilola, and he can speak for a few minutes about current work he's doing as a very inspiring youth of Nigeria. He is a co-founder and CEO of the Youth Sustainable Development Council, in Nigeria, and he is here with us today to talk about what he's doing and how he's helping the youth of Africa to develop sustainably. So Domilola, please take over right now.
All right, thank you very much, Madison. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, the connection's a little bit fuzzy, but I think everyone can hear you.
All right, awesome. All right, thank you, ISCEA, for putting this together. And so I am Domilola Balogun from Nigeria. I am the founder and CEO of the Youth Sustainable Development Network. So what we do largely is to ensure that youth are actually put at the center of sustainable development. So we understand that there are a lot of youth-led initiatives that are actually making youth impact across the continent, African continent, and in the world at large. And so what we're trying to do really is to create an enabling environment where they are supported with resources such that they are able to actually actualize their goal and the purpose upon which they are actually incorporated. So the basic point really is that we are putting youth at the center of sustainable development, trying to empower and educate youth on sustainable development. So a lot of us are familiar with the affairs of the United Nations. Last year, the United Nations declared this decade as Decade of Action. And so what we're trying to do this year and this decade really is to do a lot of, put in a lot of action with respect to supporting youth and sustainability. And so what we are doing really is to work with social entrepreneurs across the African continent and in the world at large, where they are able to be supported with necessary finance and then resources to scale up impact, and at the end of the day, try to carry along a lot of young people when it comes to sustainability. And a lot of us are also aware that almost half of the world population is made up of young people. And so if 2030 agenda is all about the future for the youth, it is then important they are empowered and educated just so they are prepared for the future. And so a lot of great things that's set to happen. will actually happen in terms of youth and sustainable development. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dummy. It's so inspiring to hear the work that you're doing with the youth in Africa, because I think, it gives a really great perspective about how, we have all of these great inspirational leaders to look up to that have spoken today. But really where we're going to make change is this upcoming generation, and how we can inspire the youth around the world to continue to work towards this and keep setting examples. So thank you for your continuous work, and thank you again for being here with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Our last speaker is Ms. Sofia Herrera. She is one of the ISCEA Global Ambassadors as well. She's a CSSCP certificate holder, and I get to work with her, very closely day in and day out, and she's everywhere in the sustainable supply chain realm right now. Every conference I've been to, every webinar I've attended, she's been there as well. She works day in and day out. She's currently a senior staffing analyst at Mercado Libre, and she's based in Mexico. It is a pleasure to introduce her, and she really is an inspiring woman in the industry, a young woman who, we might be the same age, but I still look up to her, and I'm very happy to have her with us today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Sofia.
Hi, can everyone hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Madison, for the introduction. I for sure also look up to you. You're always very involved in circular economy projects, sustainability, which are things that I'm very passionate about. And well, I would also like to thank you for leading this great event. I think for sure we're going to make great connections here. And also thanks to all the speakers. I think I've learned a lot from all of you just in these couple hours, and there are some great takeaways from the information you all shared and the projects you're all involved in. So, well, yeah, as Madison mentioned, I currently live and work in Mexico at Mercado Libre, which is an e-commerce company. So for sure, there are opportunities there to make an impact in the world. And well, I am an ambassador for the Sustainable Supply Chain Certification Program by ISCEA, which I believe is a learning opportunity for supply chain professionals and other enthusiasts out there that want to broaden their knowledge with tools and practical literacy to actually become agents of change, not only in their companies and enterprises, but also in their day-to-day life on a personal level and impacting their environment around them. I think it is crucial for us to make time in our lives to get to know the different initiatives, the different roadmaps out there that can take us to the same direction. For example, the SDGs. And by doing this, we're all aligning towards the same direction, and we are becoming more empowered to actually hold ourselves and others accountable for the actions we take and the decisions we make, and see what impact we have on our environment. I think we've all heard from most of the previous speakers how important it is to do a personal assessment of where we stand as individuals, and from that point, evaluate like where our family stands, our community, our country, and at the end of the day, where our world stands, and how can we improve it. I think we're all on a very good position working in supply chain. I think it is a great place where change can be achieved and can be scaled up. So I think we should all embrace this opportunity we have and make the most out of it. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sofia, for being here with us today. It's a pleasure to have you end our pledge day as our final speaker. I think it's great to see that you continue to inspire people around the world with the work that you're doing, both in your professional career, but also as a personal, your own personal agenda, speaking towards what's important, being a CSSCP ambassador, sharing that education. And not only do you have, great education and that credential, but also you're really someone that has put your education to action. And I think you're a great example of someone who's like up and coming and is really going to be someone that's going to transform the industry, as you already are.
Thank you. I always look up to all of you and always learning from all of you as well.
Of course. Thank you again. I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. And, just as an extension of Sophia and Dami, I wanted to, just talk a little bit about, we've heard all of these speakers talk about how education is so important and action as well, but it is hard to have action if you don't have the right education. So I do want to just talk for a quick second about the CSSCP, which is ISCEA's Certified Sustainable Supply Chain Professional Certificate Program. This course integrates sustainability into all supply chain topics. And what's interesting about this, and if you talk to any certificate holder, is this course actually supports the UN SDGs, meaning that we show real industry examples of companies and professionals that have made these transitions and are working towards a more sustainable future, showing how you can maximize the success of supply chain while still protecting the planet, and showing that the optimal supply chains and efficiency will be done when done sustainably. So it's great for people that are interested in pledging to the SDGs or currently working towards them to actually gain this education and this knowledge and help to assist it in becoming one of those next action steps. Just to show you guys, if you are interested, there's 2 levels to the exam. One on the left side, level 1 being the education, the lecture material, etc. But level 2 is, my favorite part, ISCEA's favorite part, is actually the action, the sustainability initiative, where we get to, have all these mentors and inspirations and look at what industries are doing and what's going on and actually start to implement things, taking examples from leaders around the world and implementing them into our own corporations or wherever that certificate holder comes from. So with that being said, ISCEA has really done a great job of making sure that not only is education important, but action at the end of the day in this specific realm and sustainability is so important. We can sit here, like I said, and have this 2-hour virtual pledge day, but if we don't all go back and continue to put these things into action and work hard, we're not going to see that change. So I really want to touch upon that, and the word action is kind of where I want to leave you guys with, like I said, projects and actually working towards a more sustainable future is so important. Not only are we supporting the UN SDGs by transforming our supply chains, but supporting your own company with its efficiency, supporting your global community, and supporting not last but not least at all is this planet. We only have one, and linear supply chains will not be able to be sustainable. At the end of the day, we're going to have to transition. So it's why not now? So if we combine all of the expertise of every speaker here today, I'm sure we're doing our best, we're putting the right foot forward and working towards that future. And I think I can speak to this and show this. We had multiple speakers that are involved with SDG work, and I think it's amazing. There's endless contacts that we can talk to, we can discuss with, and really figure out how we can work towards these in 2030. I want to just highlight, it's great to see that global leaders like Unilever are already putting sustainability into practice, just to name one. So for example, if you're looking for inspiration, just look towards some of these industry leaders and see what their CSOs and CEOs are putting into place and add to them. Maybe implement some of these practices into your own company or whatever industry you're in. I think there's a lot of change and transition that's happening right now. So let's all continue to be part of the solution. I think we're all here today and can agree that we want to be part of the solution. It's so exciting, that not only do we see this change happening all around the world, but there's, through so many different award ceremonies, people are starting to get recognized for their hard work in this. And I think it's something so great. In addition, ISCEA will be announcing the Supply Chain Sustainability Award this year. So if you know anyone or any industry leaders who you think really have been a leader in this transition to a more circular supply chain, please do submit any type of recognition or recommendations as we select someone and maybe a few people to actually be awarded this because, hard work deserves commendability. And I think, at the end of the day, we all would be here without any award just because we truly are passionate about it. But I do want to share that, it is important to, thank those that continue to lead and thank all of the speakers that were with us today. You guys all continue to work hard. You're all leaders in unique aspects, but the common theme is that we all really care about the planet and sustainability. So thank you all again. I think this Pledge Day has been so informative and so inspirational. I know I'm leaving this today feeling inspired, continuing to work on sustainability. And if you haven't already, please do sign the certificate of commitment and send it back to us. We'll be happy to announce you guys as pledgees for the Global Supply Chain Sustainability Pledge Day. And what I would like to do is if everyone would want to share their camera for a second and give a thumbs up for sustainability, I think it would be a really great final note to just have an inspirational last look at all the faces in the room that are continuing to pledge and just, see that we're all in this together, where we're continuing to work hard. There's not a shortage of us, to rely on for advice, for professional experience. We're here, we're working together, and we continue to make great changes. So thank you all again for being with us today. We look forward to seeing, your certificates circulated on the internet and, pushing others to also pledge as well.
Take a picture, Madison.
Yes, I can take a screenshot here for us. Great. Thank you guys so much. I mean, I know the hour is up, but if anyone wants to unmute and say anything, you're more than welcome to. Thank you all again. And I'm sure we will all stay in contact with each other as well.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, Madison. Great job.
Thank you, Madison.
Thank you, Madison and everyone. Thank you so much.
Happy Earth Day, everyone.
Day, everyone.
Thank you so much for the session. It was great.
Have a good
Thank you,
weekend.
Madison, for the session.
Bye, everyone.
Stay safe.
Looking forward to connect. Bye.
Bye-bye.